Hi, I'm Scott, Dr. Jigs Goldfine, welcoming you to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkandstuff.net. This is the interview show that goes deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. Whether you're watching to the video version at funkandstuff.net or on YouTube or listening to the audio podcast version on iTunes, Spotify, Google, or from many other leading providers, as always, thank you very much for your continued interest and support. Today, I'm pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Command Center singer Steve Boyd, best known as a member of the soul funk vocal group Five Special, and later through studio work and regular appearances with George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. Five Special dropped 3 albums from 1979 to 1981 that included slamming tracks like Why Leave Us Alone, which was a top 10 R&B smash, Jam, Let's Take It to the Streets, Choosin You for Me, Your Body Heat, and Lov-A-Thon, as well as smooth ballads like You're Something Special and Spread Love All Over the World. In addition to touring extensively with PFunk as a lead and background vocalist through the years, Boyd has appeared in albums such as the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Clinton-produced Freaky Styley, Clinton's own R&B Skeletons in the Closet, the P-Funk All-Stars, Dope Dogs, and the awesome power of a fully operational mothership. Last year's A Cosmic Jazz Funk Adventure by Detroit Rising, and recordings by Paul Schaffer, Amp Fiddler, and Kendra Foster, among others. So stay tuned. Steve is coming right up. Yeah, I'm here with Steve Boyd, the one and only. Thanks for joining me, Steve. Where are you today?
I'm in the studio right now over in North Hollywood, California.
Okay, is that where you stay nowadays, or are you still in the Detroit area?
Well, I'm living in Canoga Park. I stay over here in Los Angeles in Canoga Park. And the studio is in North Hollywood, so this is my hood now.
Yeah, so I know you're from the Detroit area. How long have you been on the West Coast?
I've been on the West Coast now for about 6 or 7 years, but on and off about over 10 years.
You and I kind of flipped because I was born and raised in Southern California, but about 10 years ago, I moved out here to North Carolina.
Nice. You down there in Kakalaki. My mother lives in South Carolina, in Florence.
Okay, I'm in Charlotte.
Oh, y'all close.
Nice. I knew I could feel some of that Boyd funk nearby.
Yeah, she down there chilling. I think Myrtle Beach is the only thing that's separating y'all.
Yeah, not too far, not too far.
Charlotte is really close. One time I caught an Uber from Charlotte to Florence. From Charlotte, North Carolina to Florence, South Carolina.
That must have been expensive Uber, though.
It was like it was like 100 and something. You know, it wasn't that bad.
That's a good day for an Uber driver, though.
Anything to go see my mom. No expense. I spare no expense.
That's great. Well, I'm glad to hear she's still around, Steve.
Yeah.
So, Steve, we're going to talk some Five Special and P-Funk, but first, could you tell us how you first got into singing and music?
How I first got into singing, well, to think back at it, I asked myself that question too. How did I get myself into this mess? But I think that the only thing I could come up with is that I was like born into it. Basically, it would have been hard for me to escape it. I mean, I tried. Like, I was a boxer. I fought. Like, when I was younger, I was in the Golden Gloves and when I stopped boxing, I was undefeated with one tie. So I was like pretty good at that. And they had other plans for me. By the only thing we ever done in Detroit was make cars and stars. So I was going to be either one. They already had an application at Fisher Body with my name on it, all ready to go. But I was, the music thing outweighed. It's like, well, you can make money. Like right now, if you go into and start making cars, which is what everybody else in Detroit was doing, it's what we're known for. But the music just outweighed it. Even starting off, you get no money. You're starting off in the music business in Detroit, you aren't making no money because you have to prove yourself. And you have to go through a whole gamut of tests and trials and tribulations. And if you can just do that part and turn music into money, then the bug has bitten you. And if you like to make a living off of it, it's all about dedication and determination and having the wherewithal to stay in a position to where you're earning money. Because like coming up in Detroit, everybody plays. 9 out of 10 people that you meet on the street can sing or play or do something to make a record. Right. The trick is the trick to it. When you can turn that skill into making money, then the bug has been you got to eat. That's how I got into it. I wanted to eat. I like eating.
Well, who were some of your early influences musically?
My early influences were like some really heavy people, all Motown, because I was so close. I mean, I was influenced by like non-Motown artists. Let's start there. Like Ray Charles. Let me see another non-Motown artist. It's really hard. You see my connection. It's so strong, and with the Detroit scene, the whole Detroit music scene, and by the Detroit music scene being so powerful. And so,
well, James Brown was at Motown.
Okay, James Brown. Okay, help me out here. James Brown definitely big influence to me. Like I say, Ray Charles, and then the rest. I don't know. Would probably just have to be all Motown art, because I got the chance. Living in Motown, you'll see Stevie Wonder. You'll see Marvin Gaye. I've been to his house. You'll see the Spinners, all the Temps. You'll see Mary Wilson. You'll see all of these artists like in everyday activities, in the street, at the store, going to the studio, coming from the studio, at your friend's house, or at your auntie house. So we got it, a big super dose of it all the time.
Well, what got you going before you became hooked up with Five Special? What was your experience before that?
Well, I sang only in church. So I had like yeah, I was, a pretty, guy, that knew about the streets and all of that. But my daily routines, like I said, I was a boxer. So that was pretty constructed. And then singing in church, I only sang in church until I found out. I only sang in church, and I would sing, willingly. I knew that was my job to sing in church, but I didn't know that I was getting paid all the time, and they wasn't telling me. It was like, well, my fee was automatically getting donated to the church.
Right.
So I was like, wow, you can get paid for this. And I entered a talent show and won it right off. I was like, wow. I was like, well, I didn't say, and I'm not going to say that word, but I got out of the church immediately and started singing where I could like earn money and win money very easily. So that was a no-brainer.
So were you
all the time for the free, and the church was actually earning money for me singing? I was like, well, that's no good.
Well, singing for the Lord
myself.
So were you friends with the guys that ended up forming Five Special, or?
No, I didn't know them at all. All of my singing partners were Fred Hammond. Y'all might know him. He's a Grammy Award winner. Fred Hammond and Derek Brinkley, CC and B Winans. We were all in a choir together in Mumford, in Detroit. All of those people who I just named, we were in two singing units together. We were in the concert choir together, and we were in the mix ensemble together. If anybody knows what a mix ensemble is, and I was in that mix ensemble with BB Winans, CC Winans, Fred Hammond, Derek Brinkley, and it was another guy that y'all know, Marvin Sapp. Yeah, old Marvin. So those were all of my singing partners. I didn't know no Five Special, none of these guys who sing non-religious songs, So when I decided to leave the church, I just heard about a audition. Somebody needed a singer in a group called Five Special, and they had out a record at the time called The More I Get to Know You. The girls liked it. This song called when I sit around all day just picking petals off of daisies, and when I'm not doing that, I just sit around starry-eyed crazy, thinking about the way you look. And then Mike said, the way you smile. I was like, I gotta sing with them. All the ladies like these cats, and they looking for someone to sing. And boom, I just wanted smashed out the first audition. They were like, yes. Actually, Ron Banks, I met him at a Shoes for Children. They were raising money for kids that needed shoes around Christmas time in Detroit. And Ron Banks actually organized this whole thing. And they would have a celebrity basketball game at the U of D, University of Detroit, every year to raise money for for kids who needed shoes, and they would give them out for Christmas, and he would organize this and have all the Detroit singing groups and groups from other places come out and play basketball to raise money. And I went to the game. I paid to get in to watch all the celebrities play, and they had an after party for that game. It was at a bar called Joe Strader. I think Joe Strader played for the Pistons, the Detroit Pistons, or either the Tigers. He was a well-known athlete, and he had this club, and this is where all of these singers and the entertainers, they frequented this club, and that's where the after party was for the All-Star basketball game. And now I went to the basketball game, but the club is just a bar. So at this time I was like 16, and I wasn't like old enough to get in. I couldn't get in, like walk through the front door because I was only 16. Even though I looked it like I could go in, but I had no ID. So I went over to the club anyway. Me and my friend, we was like, man, all of these groups after the game, they're gonna be over at this club. And my friend was like, we'll just go over to the club and see if we can see some of the groups that's going in and out. That's what we did. So we was parked in the back of the place and just sitting there, and we did see people going in and out. I was like, well, the door is popping in, it's popping open, it's going open and shut. I was like, the next time that door pop open, I'm jumping in that door. So the door, I don't know, I think one of the Manhattans, I think it was Blue, from the Manhattans, he came out of the back door. As soon as he came out, I popped in and just shuffled into the bathroom, to like, I was like, I'm in, but I'm just only in the bathroom. And guess who was in the bathroom? Washing his hands. Ron Banks. And I was acting like I was washing my hands like I was supposed to be in the bathroom. And Ron Banks, he looked at me, he was like, what you doing in here, young blood? I was like, and I came out with the story. I just came out with it. I was like, hey man, I heard that your little brother's group, the Five Special, they looking for a replacement for somebody to sing in the group. They missing a member. I was like, I want to try out. And he was like, man, get out of here. He was like, you ain't even supposed to be in the club. I was like, I still want to try out for the group. He was like, sing something right now. I was like, okay. So he like closed the door to the bathroom, and I just broke out singing right then and there. Then he was like, holy shit. And then like it was a payphone right outside the bathroom. He went to the payphone and he called his mom's house, which is where Brian Banks was living at the time with his mom. He called his mama's house. He was like, and I heard him over talking on the telephone. He was like, Mom. He was like, put Brian on the phone. And then I heard her say, Brian. She was like, your brother Ronnie want to talk to you. And then Brian got on the phone around and he said, hey, man, he was like, I found a replacement for your group. He told Brian right then and there, I found a replacement for your group right there. He was like, and then he turned to me, he was like, hey, man, sing something for my brother right now on the phone. And I sung again, the same thing that I repeat what I had just sung for Ryan to Brian through the phone. And then Brian was like, well, let me speak to him. I was like, hey, man. He was like, man, my name is Brian. I'm going to organize a rehearsal for tomorrow. Can you be at rehearsal tomorrow? And then the rest is history. I went to rehearsal. I walked to rehearsal from my house, from my mama's house, over to Greg Finley's house. That's where they was having rehearsal. And I went over there. He was like, "You in?" He was like, "Can you get a suit?" They didn't even have enough money to buy me a suit. My grandmother had to buy it. My grandmother bought my first uniform for the 5 Special.
So that was like 1978 or 77?
That was 77.
Yeah.
78. Then by 79, the record was out. Why Leave Us Alone?
Yeah. So you mentioned another record which I had never heard before. I first, heard Why Leave Us Alone was the first thing I ever heard by 5 Special in 79.
There was 2 records before Why Leave Us Alone. That one I sung to you previously, and it was one after that called Let's Stop Making Small Talk, which was it went up the charts. It was a loco. Yeah, did real good around Detroit.
Yeah. So Ron Banks, of course, famously of the Dramatics. Were you a fan of the Dramatics at all, or not so much?
Oh yeah, I was a super fan of the Dramatics. Super fan of the Dramatics. Just like everybody else was in Detroit who was, into singing and performing and R&B. The Dramatics were on top. They had actually taken over the Temptations. In Detroit, well, it's a line that's drawn in Detroit on that. It is a whole big argument and discussion on, who was the best group. And it's between the Temptations and the Dramatics.
Yeah, well, that's hard to pick between them for sure. So what was it like for you when you actually got into a studio and started, rubbing your elbows with professional music makers?
Well, again, my first real recording session where I was to learn and get the whole feel for the thing was at United Sound, and it was on the Why Leave Us Alone session. It was on the Why Leave Us Alone session. We did the background vocals first, which back then you would rehearse a song like a lot before you ever even got a chance to go into the studio to record it. So we had the song down pat. So we put the background vocals down, and with the 5 Special, everybody sung lead. So everybody had to get their lead parts on too. So it came my turn to do my lead part, and it was like, okay, come on out, Steve, do your part. So I went out, put the headphones on, they rolled the tape. Here comes the part. I got the part. I got this. The part came, boom. I sung it, and I'm looking in the booth. I can see through the window, and you can see everybody's reaction. And I start seeing people, they holding their head down. And Ron Banks, he was the producer. Then he starts flagging me in. He starts this motion right here. And I said, damn, I was like, I'm fired after the first thing. And so I'm still on the mic, like just like this. I'm still like, but hey, I'm like, give me another shot. I was like, I was just warming up, man. I was like, come on. And they was like, everybody was like doing like, get in here. I was like, damn. And I came and I threw the headphones down and I came into the control room. I was like, y'all not gonna give me a shot. They was like, it's done. I swear to you, you can ask Brian and all of them. They was like, it's done, dude. You are first. That's where I got the name, First Take Jake.
First Take. Wow.
And that take right there is on the record to this day. They never gave me another shot at it.
That record, man, I love that. From the first time I heard it, it was incredible. And, you know, at that time, I mean, there weren't that many vocal groups that were getting as funky as you guys did on that. You know, mostly the bands were the ones that were doing funk at that time. Are you the one doing the I part on that? I want to
that would be Greg Finley.
Yeah, well, you all kicked butt on that, and I saw Five Special play a show at the Santa Monica Civic. Do you remember?
Oh my God!
Do you remember that show or doing that tour?
I remember that show. I could tell you some things about that show. Yes, I do. We were on the show with Michael Henderson, Heatwave, and Son.
Yeah, I remember Heatwave did the Human Pyramid in their act.
Yeah, I met Natalie Cole that night. Which was, it was great meeting Natalie that night. I never knew. She was, her and Michael Henderson had some things going on there. She, and some kind of way, she asked me to go into Michael's dressing room to get him out. He didn't want to come out or something. I was young in the business. I don't know what's going on. All I know is Natalie Cole is asking me to go into the room and get Michael.
Were you the youngest member of Five Special?
Yes, I was the baby of the bunch. I wasn't old enough to be singing in all of the clubs we were singing in. Henry's Palace was a famous, very famous club that all R&B acts played in Detroit. And we played there like a lot. We played there a lot. That was where we did most of our shows before we prepared to go on the road, before we go on tour. And I had been singing at Henry's Palace. When I got in the group, I was, when I joined Five Special, I was 16. I was 16, and then the Five Special had the record out, so they were playing in clubs, like I say, Henry's Palace, Ethel's Cocktail Lounge, Mozambique, 20 Grand. And I was 16, but didn't know, you know, once I put on a suit and started singing, don't nobody know that I'm underage. But at Henry's Palace, we used to play there. Matter of fact, let me show you something. I just got this printed out. Somebody sent this to me. You see it?
Yeah, I see Five Special right in the middle, Henry's Palace. March 5 and 6. Does it have the year on it too?
Yeah. So we used to play at this club all the time. And this is when I was like 16, 17, still not old enough, you know, legally to be in the club. But no one knew the better. None of the club owners knew. But we at Henry's, And Henry's, we used to play a matinee, so that's like 3 shows a day on Sunday. On Sunday, we playing 3 shows. We play a matinee at 6 o'clock, where like elderly people would come and kids. They would let kids come in, you know, for this matinee. And my grandmother came to this one Sunday, and she was friends or somehow that knew somebody that knew the club owner's wife. So they were sitting at the bar talking, and she's talking to the club owner's wife and telling her, well, yeah, that's my grandson. That's the one they're singing there. They got that record out, and that's my baby, and he's 16.
Blowing your cover.
She told the club owner's wife. He came into the dressing room before the next set. He came and he busted into the dressing room before the next set, and he told us, he pointed at me, he was like, you. He was like, how come y'all, he said, he blessed the group out. How come y'all didn't tell me he was underage? He was singing in here all of this time, and y'all didn't tell me. He was like, well, he can sing in here, but he can't come out of the dressing room ever. Because the dressing room had like a door that led out of the club, like out to the back street. He's like, he comes in this back door onto the stage and back out of the back door. No coming in the club, because I had been like all, coming in the club, sitting down, getting drinks, talking to the ladies and everything the whole while. He was like, no more of that. Henry's Palace. Bless his soul.
How did it feel for you, Steve, when you heard your songs on the radio and knew that you guys had a hit?
Man, in Detroit, it was like a burden lifted. All of the hard work had paid off, and believe me, we worked very hard to get that record. So to hear it, and believe me, you wasn't getting no record played on the radio in Detroit. The competition was very stiff. So to be able to get and listen, that record, even the radio version was like 5 minutes long. The disco version was 10 minutes and 17 seconds. You can check it. And once the record caught on, they started playing the disco version. So that's like 10 whole minutes on the radio. You don't get that anymore. You getting 3-4 minutes tops. I'm talking about on the best top artists of today. That's all you're getting on the radio. You're not getting no 10-minute record played. And that record was like spinning like crazy. It was like it was always on the radio. You get in your car, it's on the radio. You go to the barber shop, it's on the radio. You walking in the supermarket, it's on the radio. And so that was like, we felt like a good gratification from that. It was like so instant, from like not having nobody knowing who we were to everybody knowing who we were.
Well, it sure wasn't just Detroit either, because I grew up in Los Angeles and it hit big there. And, that year 79, I think that was probably the longest track that they were playing on the radio other than Knee Deep by Funkadelic, which was like 15 minutes. But yeah, it was a nice long track.
Yeah, and it would keep you going too.
What was really cool about it, Steve, too, was that it has a long music intro. you know, it like builds up the track for like a minute at least before you guys start coming in with your vocals.
Mm-hmm. Those string arrangements were done by Wayne Henderson and Don Mizell.
Mm. Don Mizell did great stuff with LTD.
And Rick Giannatos did the disco mix, who did the disco mix for Donna Summer.
Wow, you guys had some heavy hitters on that first record. And then
yeah, and we were blessed to be able to be around those type of people. But as I see going through my career, when your talent is at a certain level, you draw that level of talent to you. So it's a blessing, but to be dedicated, you have to, the dedication and the determination has got to be there to want to be, you know, that good, or even want to be around people that's that good, or to the point to where you deserve to even be working with people who are that good.
Well, the next year you came back with an even funkier track, Jam, Let's Take It to the Streets, with now that is not Bernie Worrell playing keyboard on, is it? Because I mean it sounds so much like Bernie.
That certainly is Bernie Worrell playing keyboards on there. I sat there in United Sound, just like I'm sitting right here in the studio right now, and I watched Bernie bang it out. That's
okay, because he didn't get credited, but I mean, I was like, man, that's got to be Bernie.
It was some type of thing going on with Armin and George, and some type of little unsaid rule at that time where Bernie was all right with not being credited, and also that is the Horny Horns. That's Fred Wesley and Maceo on there too, and Rick Gardner.
Wow. How did it come to be though that connection was made with Five Special and them?
We recorded right in the PFunk Lab.
Ah.
We would walk out of session. We controlled United Sound at this time. If it wasn't Five Special or the Dramatics or a George Clinton production, nobody was in that studio. We dominated the studio at the time. You couldn't get in there. You wasn't getting there. I think Anita Baker, she could sneak in. Aretha Franklin came in and did Pink Cadillac during that time. But it was only like really major people who could even get into that studio because we had it on lock. They renamed it. It was the PFunk Lab. People know about the PFunk Lab, but really, I was just thinking about this the other day, but really the PFunk Lab is United Sound. Is United Sound, but a lot of people, they just know the P-Funk Lab because it's a direct association with the whole P-Funk, thing that's going on. But it's United Sound, and we shared the studio, like we split it down the middle.
Yeah, a lot of magic happened in that studio, no question about that.
Oh yeah. The Magic Castle.
So were you just having like the time of your life, like when you were doing that record, or
Which record?
the second Five Special?
Oh yeah, I was. Oh my God, the second record. Electra was like, we need this done yesterday. Our record companies, how they want to keep up the momentum of, any notoriety that you had from the first one, which Why Leave Us Alone was on fire. It was on fire. We was knocking down charts everywhere. So they really wanted to get another album done ASAP. So we were taken off of the road, back to Detroit, back into United Sound. And George and them was there, as usual, pumping out the funk. And that was the connection. I mean, it's a no-brainer with Bernie, and the Horny Horns were already sitting there. So now we got to do a record right quick. It's like, we not putting them out of the studio and like, hey, we got to do our album. Y'all got to get out of the way. It's like, no, we got to do our album and y'all don't go nowhere. Stay right there. As a matter of fact. Yeah.
At that time, the late 70s, early 80s, Steve, for vocal groups, R&B vocal groups, they were either going disco or they were kind of mellow. There wasn't really much funk, like I said before. So you had like the older groups like Dramatics and OJs were doing just kind of more like R&B stuff. And the younger ones like an Enchantment, they were doing kind of mellower stuff. What was it you think that made Five Special want to do more funk than probably any of the other R&B vocal groups at that time?
Because funk was happening and we sitting right in the PFunk Lab, right? We live basically in the PFunk Lab. Now, Why Leave Us Alone actually earned us a what is the Billboard? We won a Billboard award that year, 1979. You can research that. Who won for the best disco record that year was Five Special. So by the industry, Billboard, we were like casted into disco and won the best disco record, which you might ask, how does that happen? How does an R&B group from Detroit win the best disco record of 1979? Which is all just like a fan through. And then the next album that we put out, the single, is a funk record that has Parliament Funkadelic on the record. By the way, Parliament Funkadelic is on Why Leave Us Alone too. If you listen closely to that clap track, the clap track on Why Leave Us Alone is done by Peanut, Clip, Dar Silver, George Clinton, and Sheila Horn, and Ron Ford. That's who's doing the hand clap track on Why Leave Us Alone. So forward back to the second album. We got Bernie and the Horny Horns featured on this new record, so it's not going to sound like a disco record, which we just won for the best disco record the year previous. So we got this funk record out here, which was, we was feeling it. We was feeling it. The group was feeling it. We was actually so honored just to have these guys on our record, and we coming out with this record, and this, we gonna be funky, and we kind of just set the disco thing like aside, like in the industry is like, what guys, you're the best disco record of last year, and now you throw out a funk record, and we was happy to do it, but the industry is like, well, just put us in that category, and like that's what you do, and they wasn't really trying to hear that jam. Let's take it to the street. Which the record was funky as all get out. The way the first sign that they let us know that they really wasn't feeling it. The hook was jam. It said jam, let's take it, jam you mothers. Jam you mothers, let's take it to the streets, everybody, jam you mothers. So they say, okay, that's a little bit risky. Go back.
Actually sounds like something Bootsy might have come up with. Yeah.
Look what happened. They say, y'all go back into the studio and say jam. They was like, yeah, it's a hell of a record, and the Funk Association, we can some kind of way spin that. But you got to go back in the studio and say, change the words to jam you brothers. We say jam you brothers. All right. This is what the record company wants. And the record is getting some spins just because they wanted to hear another record. But you got to change it to jam you brothers. So we go back in the studio and we do that. We came to a studio out here in LA, Total Experience, over on Yucca Street. And all we did was just punch in on that part, swap the words out, send it back to them, and the record still got taken off of the chart. So we would, it turns out that maybe going with the funk sound as a second, off of the second album, probably wasn't the best way to market Five Special, by them already being casted into the industry, casting us into this disco market, which received the record, greatly. They loved it.
I loved it. I was really happy because Why Leave Us Alone was a funk record to me with some disco elements, and Jam was straight funk.